By late 1776, the American Revolution was in a dire state. The Continental Army, led by General George Washington, had suffered a series of defeats, including significant losses in New York City and the retreat across New Jersey. The army was demoralized, and many soldiers were deserting or nearing the end of their enlistments. Supplies were critically low, and the prospect of continuing the fight against the well-equipped and professional British forces seemed bleak. The British, confident in their superiority and convinced that the rebellion was on the brink of collapse, established winter quarters in various towns across New Jersey. One of these towns was Trenton, where they stationed about 1,400 Hessian soldiers. These Hessians were German mercenaries hired by the British to supplement their forces, known for their discipline and effectiveness in battle. Washington knew that a bold action was needed to revive the revolutionary cause and prevent the complete disintegration of his army. He devised a plan to surprise the Hessians in Trenton, hoping that a victory would boost American morale, inspire enlistments, and attract new recruits. The stakes were high, and failure could mean the end of the American struggle for independence. Washington's plan involved a daring and complex maneuver, crossing the icy Delaware River on Christmas night, marching his army 9 miles south to Trenton, and launching a pre-dawn attack. The plan was risky due to the harsh winter conditions and the logistical challenges of crossing the river with troops, artillery, and supplies. Washington divided his force into 3 groups, with the main assault force under his direct command. The other 2 groups, commanded by Generals John Cadwalader and James Ewing, were to cross the river at different points and provide support by attacking the British garrisons at Bordentown and Trenton Ferry, respectively. However, the severe weather prevented these supporting forces from making the crossing, leaving Washington's main force to carry out the attack alone. Despite these setbacks, Washington was determined to proceed with the plan. He understood the symbolic importance of a Christmas night crossing and the psychological impact a surprise attack could have on the enemy. His officers and men, though exhausted and weary, were inspired by Washington's resolve and the prospect of a much-needed victory. On the night of December 25th to 26th, 1776, in the midst of a fierce nor'easter, Washington and his 2,400 troops began their crossing of the Delaware River. The weather was brutal, with snow, sleet, and rain, making the already treacherous river crossing even more dangerous. The swift current, chunks of ice, and freezing temperatures added to the difficulty. The army used Durham boats, flat-bottomed cargo vessels, to transport men, horses, and artillery across the river. The crossing was a daunting task, but it was completed successfully through the skillful navigation of the boatmen, many of whom were experienced sailors from the Marblehead Regiment under the command of Colonel John Glover. Despite the challenges, the crossing was completed by the early hours of December 26th. Washington's ability to maintain the element of surprise was crucial, and his leadership and determination inspired his men to persevere. The soldiers were cold, wet, and tired, but they pressed on, motivated by the hope of turning the tide of the war. After crossing the river, Washington's army began its 9-mile march south to Trenton. The troops trudged through the freezing conditions, many without adequate winter clothing or shoes, leaving a trail of bloody footprints in the snow. The march was grueling, with soldiers struggling against the icy wind and snow, yet they were driven by the anticipation of the coming battle. Along the way, Washington and his officers encouraged their men, reminding them of the stakes and the importance of their mission. The soldiers carried their muskets, ammunition, and supplies, knowing that every moment was critical. The march was carefully timed to ensure that the attack would take place before dawn, maximizing the element of surprise. Despite the harsh conditions, the army reached the outskirts of Trenton just before dawn, their resolve unwavering and their spirits lifted by Washington's inspiring leadership. The American forces reached the outskirts of Trenton just before dawn. The Hessians, under the command of Colonel Johann Rohr, were caught completely by surprise. The Hessians had been celebrating Christmas the night before and were not expecting an attack, especially given the harsh weather conditions. Many of the soldiers were still asleep or recovering from their festivities when the American assault began. Washington divided his forces into two columns to attack from different directions, encircling the town and trapping the Hessian forces. The attack began around 8 a.m., with the Americans swiftly overwhelming the Hessian outposts and moving into the town. The surprise was complete, and the Hessians were thrown into confusion. The Americans moved quickly through the streets, using their artillery to great effect and engaging in fierce hand-to-hand combat. The Hessians attempted to form defensive positions, but were overwhelmed by the coordinated assault. Colonel Rohr, despite being mortally wounded, tried to rally his troops, but was unable to turn the tide. The battle was intense but brief, lasting only about 45 minutes. The Hessians, disorganized and unprepared, attempted to mount a defense but were quickly overrun. The Americans captured approximately 900 Hessian soldiers, along with their arms, ammunition, and supplies. The remaining Hessians either fled or were killed in the fighting. The victory was complete, and the American forces had achieved their objective with minimal casualties. The Battle of Trenton resulted in a decisive American victory. The Continental Army captured approximately 900 Hessian soldiers, along with their arms, ammunition, and supplies. American casualties were remarkably low, with only a few soldiers wounded or killed. The victory at Trenton had a profound impact on the American cause. It revitalized the revolutionary effort, boosted the morale of Washington's troops, and encouraged re-enlistments and new enlistments into the Continental Army. The battle is often remembered as a turning point in the American Revolution, highlighting the importance of bold and decisive action in the face of overwhelming odds.